Good evening, dear listeners, and a very warm welcome to you all. Wherever you are tuning in from tonight, maybe cozied up in bed, listening from your favorite quiet corner at home, or perhaps relaxing somewhere peaceful, with the world fading away outside. I'm so glad you've joined me here. Take a slow, deep breath. Let your shoulders drop. Maybe pull the covers up a bit higher and feel the day gently slip away. Let the story begin. The Grand Canal shimmered under the Venetian moonlight as the perfect stage for tragedy. Elegant, refined, every guest playing their role behind silk masks and jeweled costumes in the Palazzo della Maschera. Then Sir Reginald Vale was found dead in his private study. A crystal glass of cognac spilled across the polished mahogany desk, the faint bitter almond scent of cyanide still hanging in the warm air. The police saw a tragic accident amid the revelry of the Masquerade ball. But Hercule Poirot saw a performance. Someone in this theatre of wealth was playing the role of innocent, the role of murderer. The curtain rises. Chapter 1. The stage is set. The Palazzo della Maschera rose like a gilded proscenium on the Grand Canal, its marble facade glowing under strings of lanterns that danced with the water's gentle lap. Inside, the grand ballroom pulsed with carefully orchestrated life. Crystal chandeliers tinkled softly overhead as couples swirled across the polished parquet floors. Silk evening gowns in deep jewel tones rustled with every turn, their expensive perfume, notes of Chanel and Worth, mingling with the rich aroma of Cuban cigar smoke and the crisp, dry sparkle of chilled champagne. Hothouse roses and lilies filled silver vases, in their sweet fragrance heavy in the warm drawing-room air. The distant strains of a string quartet provided the perfect overture, while servants moved silently, the soft thud of their footsteps blending with the occasional pop of a champagne cork. Sir Reginald Vale had planned this masquerade for months. It was to be the highlight of the Venetian season, a celebration of his latest triumph, the acquisition of a rare Titian sketch once said to have graced the Doge's private chambers. Guests arrived in elaborate Venetian carnival costumes, lace, feathers, gold leaf, and velvet masks that concealed identities and intentions alike. The evening felt alive with performance. Lady Margaret Vale, the elegant hostess, glided through the crowd in a peacock blue silk gown that caught the light with every step. Her feathered mask hid eyes that scanned the room with practiced poise. Victor Lang, Sir Reginald's business partner, laughed a little too loudly in a black domino cloak, his gloved hand steady on a crystal flute of champagne. The Contessa Isabella Rossi sparkled in crimson silk, her mask dangling from one finger as she accepted compliments on her latest patronage. Dr. Julian Black moved among the guests with professional calm, while young Anthony Vale, the nephew and heir, played the charming host in a colorful harlequin jacket. Miss Clara Whitmore, the quiet secretary, hovered near the edges in a simple butterfly costume, her kid gloves twisting nervously. The stage was alive, every actor in place. Then, shortly after midnight, a scream cut through the music like a missed cue. It came from the private study at the far end of the East Gallery, a room Sir Reginald had kept locked during the ball. Guests froze mid-waltz. Servants dropped trays with muffled thuds on the cold marble. The body lay slumped across the polished mahogany desk, one hand still clutching the stem of an empty cognac glass. The mask had slipped sideways, revealing a face frozen in surprise. The faint, bitter almond scent of cyanide lingered in the warm air like an unscripted line. No note, no obvious struggle. only the spilled cognac pooling on the leather blotter, already drying at the edges. Police arrived swiftly by motor launch, their boots leaving damp prints on the terrace. They spoke of heart failure, perhaps brought on by the evening's exertions and the rich food. An unfortunate accident amid the revelry. Poirot, who had been invited as a guest of honor, stood quietly in the doorway of the study and observed. He had come to Venice seeking rest after his last case, yet the theater of crime had claimed him once more. He tilted his egg-shaped head, green eyes gleaming with quiet satisfaction. Already the little grey cells stirred. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how this one's hands tremble while another's remain perfectly still. Observe, mon ami, this suspect plays their role too perfectly. The mask slips. Did you catch it? Hercule Poirot drew himself up to his full height, still small, yet commanding the space. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precise fingers and made an expressive gesture with his small hands. The performance. Lady Margaret Vale weeps, yes. The handkerchief dabs at the eyes. In the shoulders shake appropriately. The tell. But observe. The handkerchief remains dry. The mascara does not run. The performance of grief, it is technically perfect. Too perfect. The psychology. I am reminded of the Ackroyd affair, where a man performed shock so convincingly that even I, Hercule Poirot, was momentarily deceived. He had rehearsed in mirrors, practiced the widening of eyes and the dropping of the jaw. But he made one error. He reached for his cigarette case too steadily. A man truly shocked does not have steady hands. The body, it knows the truth even when the face lies. This is what the psychology beneath the performance reveals. The truth. Therefore, this woman knew of the death before she was told. Her grief is costume, not feeling. You see it now, non? The theatre crumbles, and the cast quickly gathered in the main drawing room, their masks now removed or pushed back like discarded props. The fire crackled in the grand fireplace, sending waves of welcome warmth against the chill night air drifting from the open terrace doors. Strong continental coffee was served in delicate porcelain cups, its rich aroma cutting through the fading scent of champagne and cigar smoke. Leather armchairs creaked softly as guests sat, the polished mahogany tables reflecting the glow of wall sconces. Lady Margaret Vale sat nearest the fire, a cashmere shawl draped over her silk gown. Her shoulders still shook occasionally, but the lace handkerchief in her lap stayed dry. Victor Lang stood beside her, offering a steady arm, his face a careful mask of loyal concern. Contessa Isabella Rossi clutched a champagne flute that had gone warm in her gloved hand, her crimson silk gown rustling as she shifted. Dr. Julian Black examined the body briefly before joining them, his leather medical bag at his feet and the faint scent of sandalwood cologne mixing with the room's fragrances. Miss Clara Whitmore hovered near the doorway in her butterfly costume, fingers twisting a kid glove. Young Anthony Vale paced restlessly by the fireplace, the fire's warmth doing little to ease the sudden chill that had settled over the gathering. Footsteps echoed on the parquet as servants moved discreetly, the grandfather clock in the hall chiming the quarter hour with solemn tones. Poirot arranged 2 silver candlesticks symmetrically on a side table, inhaling the sweet scent of the hothouse lilies nearby. The psychology, or it is everything, order and method. Already each suspect had claimed a role in this unfolding drama. Lady Margaret played the devoted widow. Victor Lang performed the steadfast business partner. The Contessa offered the image of the shocked friend of the arts. Dr. Black delivered the calm professional opinion. Anthony showed the face of the devastated heir. Miss Whitmore embodied quiet, helpful innocence. Yet one among them had written the fatal final scene. The night air from the canal carried the faint scent of distant wood smoke, blending with the leather smell of old books and the crisp linen napkins still scattered from earlier refreshments. Silk rustled as Lady Margaret adjusted her shawl. A crystal chandelier tinkled faintly overhead as a draught stirred it. The cold terrace beyond the windows contrasted sharply with the warm drawing room, where the fire continued to crackle and pop. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. Every actor in this drama has a secret. Poirot, he sees behind the masks. The stage is set. Let us watch who forgets their lines. The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Ask yourself, why does she avoid his eyes? This actor plays grief, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. The palazzo stood silent now, save for the gentle lap of the Grand Canal and the occasional soft closing of a door. The masquerade ball had ended abruptly, its festive energy replaced by suspicion and carefully rehearsed performances. The guests watched one another with new wariness, on their elegant costumes suddenly feeling like heavy burdens. The stage was set. The actors had taken their places. Let the drama begin. Chapter 2. Enter the players' dawn light, filtered through the tall arched windows of the drawing room, painting the Grand Canal in soft silver beyond the cold marble terrace. The palazzo felt smaller now. Its Art Deco elegance turned intimate and watchful. The masquerade's festive energy had vanished, leaving only the faint scent of wilting hothouse lilies and the lingering aroma of strong continental coffee that servants had freshly prepared. Leather armchairs creaked as the cast took their seats once more. Silk gowns from the previous night had been exchanged for simpler morning attire, yet the performances continued without pause. Poirot stood near the fireplace, and its gentle crackling warmth contrasting the chill draught from the canal. He had arranged a small silver tray of coffee cups with perfect symmetry, the rich, dark liquid steaming invitingly. His green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as he surveyed the players. The first formal interviews would unfold like carefully staged scenes, each suspect revealing their assigned role, while Poirot watched for the inevitable missed cues. You watch with Poirot, non? You see how this one's hands tremble while another's remain perfectly still. Ask yourself, why does she avoid his eyes? The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Victor Lang entered first, still wearing elements of his black domino cloak over rough tweed trousers. He sat heavily in a polished mahogany chair, the fabric brushing softly against the wood. His performance was that of the loyal business partner, voice steady, face composed in appropriate concern. Reginald and I were like brothers, he declared, gesturing with a gloved hand. The Titian acquisition was our greatest joint triumph. When Poirot gently inquired about the cognac glass found beside the body, Lang's fingers tightened ever so slightly on the armrest. A small tell. The alibi he offered placed him in the ballroom the entire evening, laughing and dancing beneath the tinkling crystal chandeliers. Yet his laughter the night before had sounded too loud, too rehearsed. Watch this performance carefully, Poirot murmured. Is it truth or theatre? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth. Contessa Isabella Rossi followed, trailing the expensive scent of Worth perfume that mingled with the room's fading cigar smoke. Her crimson silk gown had been replaced by a softer morning dress, yet she still moved with dramatic flair, the fabric rustling elegantly. She played the role of the shocked confidant and patron of the arts with wide eyes and trembling lips. Reggie and I shared only a love of beauty, she insisted, clutching a warm champagne flute from the night before as if it were a prop. Her alibi was neat, dancing continuously in the ballroom, visible to dozens, but her glance once flicked toward the study door with something colder than sorrow. The mask slips. Did you catch it? Poirot tilted his egg-shaped head, listening intently. Consider the psychology. What role does this person need to play? If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? And Dr. Julian Black came next, carrying his leather medical bag. The faint, antiseptic scent beneath his sandalwood cologne cutting through the coffee aroma. He performed the helpful, professional physician with crisp precision, describing how cyanide could act swiftly and silently. I had warned Sir Reginald about his heart, but poison, most unlikely in such a setting. His hands remained remarkably steady as he spoke, folding and unfolding a crisp linen napkin on the table. When pressed about the exact time he examined the body, a brief hesitation appeared, like an actor forgetting a single line. Young Anthony Vale entered with restless energy, his colorful harlequin jacket now crumpled. He played the devastated nephew and heir with cracking voice and pacing footsteps that echoed on the parquet floor. Uncle Reggie was everything to me, he said, eyes darting toward his aunt. Yet when Poirot mentioned the details of the will, Anthony's grief seemed to sharpen into something else. Resentment, perhaps, poorly concealed. His kid gloves twisted in his lap, the soft leather creaking. Miss Clara Whitmore was the last to be interviewed. The secretary sat primly in her simple blouse and skirt, the butterfly mask from the ball now folded neatly beside her on the table. She embodied quiet innocence, wide-eyed and earnest. I typed Sir Reginald's letters until 8 o'clock, then joined the ball briefly, she explained, voice soft. Her alibi was tidy and unremarkable, yet her fingers betrayed her, constantly adjusting the kid gloves as though they no longer fit comfortably. Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands. And the careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice the small gestures that betray the script. As the interviews progressed, small contradictions emerged like missed cues in a failing play. Lady Margaret Vale, questioned again in her boudoir, claimed she had not seen her husband after 10 o'clock. Yet a servant recalled her silhouette on the cold terrace near midnight, the chill night air carrying fragments of heated whispers. Victor Lung insisted the business partnership was thriving, but Miss Whitmore's private notes, shown discreetly to Poirot, hinted at heated arguments over missing funds routed through obscure accounts. The Contessa spoke warmly of art and friendship, yet faint traces of cognac appeared on her gloves, suggesting she had handled a glass that was not her own. Dr. Black's medical opinion sounded flawless, yet he had paused noticeably before pronouncing the cause of death. Anthony Vale's footsteps had been too steady when he first approached the study, lacking the natural hesitation of genuine shock. Poirot adjusted his moustache with precision, the fire crackling softly in the grate and sending faint wood smoke curling upward. Rain began to patter lightly against the tall windows, a gentle percussion that underscored the rising tension in the room. The cast watched one another with fresh wariness now, their elegant postures growing stiffer. Silk rustled as Lady Margaret shifted in her chair. The grandfather clock chimed again, its solemn tones muffled by heavy velvet curtains. The warm drawing room felt increasingly confining against the chill terrace outside. Bravo! But the performance, it was not convincing. This actor plays loyalty. But observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer? The spotlight of truth is about to shine. On whom will it fall? Poirot arranged a vase of slightly wilting lilies symmetrically on the sideboard, inhaling their fading sweetness, mixed with the rich coffee aroma. Every actor in this drama has a secret. Poirot, he sees behind the masks. The psychology, it is everything. The players had delivered their opening lines, yet the script already showed strains. Footsteps echoed softly in the corridor as servants moved discreetly, doors closing with gentle clicks. The canal lapped steadily outside, indifferent to the human drama unfolding within these gilded walls. The morning light grew stronger, illuminating the polished mahogany furniture and the faint wax sheen left by diligent servants. Champagne corks from the ball still littered a distant sideboard, silent reminders of the night's interrupted revelry. The cast sat in uneasy silence, their roles feeling heavier with every passing minute. Chapter 3. The First Act. By mid-morning, the Palazzo della Masquerade felt smaller, its once spacious corridors now corridors of suspicion under the watchful Venetian sun. Golden light slanted through tall windows, warming the velvet curtains while leaving the cold marble terrace in sharp shadow. The air carried the mixed scents of strong continental coffee, fading hothouse lilies, and the faint wood smoke drifting from a brazier on the terrace. Poirot moved through the rooms like a director blocking scenes, his patent leather shoes making soft sounds on the polished parquet. He had ordered the study sealed, yet he returned there alone for a moment, noting the dried cognac stain on the mahogany desk and the lingering bitter almond trace beneath the leather and furniture wax. Lady Margaret had retired to her boudoir, claiming a headache, the rustle of her silk morning gown fading up the stairs. The remaining cast waited uneasily in the drawing room, where fresh coffee steamed in porcelain cups, and the fire crackled with comforting warmth against the chill draught from the canal windows. Poirot arranged a pair of crystal decanters symmetrically on a side table, his small hands moving with deliberate order and method. A mask slipped in the library during Poirot's second conversation with Miss Clara Whitmore. The secretary sat primly at the mahogany table, her simple blouse crisp despite the long night, the butterfly mask from the ball folded neatly before her. She had insisted she knew nothing of business troubles. Yet when Poirot placed a folded letter found tucked inside her notebook on the table, her composure cracked. The letter spoke of urgent irregularities in the accounts and bore her own neat handwriting. I only wanted to protect him, she whispered suddenly, voice breaking for the first time. Her fingers trembled as they touched the paper, the kid gloves long discarded. Real fear, not performed innocence, shone in her eyes. The performance of quiet loyalty had cracked wide open. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theater? The mask slips. Did you catch it? This actor plays innocence. But observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? The tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully as he regarded her. The first act concludes, he murmured. Some masks had cracked. More will follow. The discovery sent ripples through the cast. Victor Lang's loyal partner's smile grew strained when Poirot mentioned the letter. Lady Margaret's grief performance faltered as she was called back to the drawing room, her cashmere shawl pulled tighter against the warm room's sudden chill in her own mind. Anthony Vale stopped pacing, his harlequin charm dimming. The Contessa clutched her warm champagne flute again, though none had been served that morning. Dr. Black's steady hands finally showed a flicker of uncertainty as he adjusted his collar, on the sandalwood cologne suddenly sharper in the tense air. Poirot drew himself up to his full height, green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He made an expressive gesture with his small hands. The performance. Miss Whitmore had played helpful secretary with wide-eyed earnestness. That tell. Yet her fingers betrayed her when confronted with her own words. The psychology. I'm reminded of the Ackroyd affair, where a man performed shock so convincingly that even I, Hercule Poirot, was momentarily deceived. He had rehearsed in mirrors, practiced the widening of eyes, the dropping of the jaw. But he made one error. He reached for his cigarette case too steadily. A man truly shocked does not have steady hands. The body, it knows the truth even when the face lies. This is what the psychology beneath the performance reveals. The truth. Therefore, the secretary knew more than she admitted. Her innocence is costume, not feeling. You see it now, no? The theater crumbles. In this theater of crime, humans wear masks not merely to deceive others, but to survive themselves. Greed performs as grief, because the heart cannot bear its own reflection in the mirror of loss. Guilt dresses as innocence, because the soul fears the harsh spotlight of judgment. We all rehearse our daily roles: loyal friend, devoted spouse, helpful professional, until the lines blur and we forget where the costume ends and the self begins. Society itself demands the performance. A Venetian palazzo ball is merely the grandest version of the masquerade we call ordinary life. The elegant silk gowns, the polished manners, the perfectly timed smiles, all serve to hide the raw motives beneath. Yet the body refuses the lie, and a trembling hand when the voice stays smooth, a dry handkerchief when tears should flow, a glance that lingers too long on a forbidden door. These are the tells the little grey cells collect like forgotten prompt books left on the stage. Consider the psychology. What role does each person need to play to protect the fragile image they have built? Fear performs as confidence, because vulnerability feels unbearable in the eyes of society. Love masks obsession when possession seems safer than honest surrender. Hate can even dress as loyalty when resentment has simmered too long. In the palazzo today, each suspect clings to their chosen script because the alternative is the abyss of exposure and the collapse of their carefully constructed world. The warm drawing room, the crackling fire, and the rich coffee aroma all provide temporary comfort while the real drama unfolds. But the theater of crime has one eternal truth. Every actor eventually forgets their lines. The mask grows heavy, the voice cracks, the hands betray what the tongue rehearses so perfectly. I am reminded of the case of the veiled lady in London some years ago. A woman performed widowhood with such flawless dedication that the entire household believed her sorrow genuine for weeks. She wore deepest black silk, dabbed at her eyes with linen handkerchiefs that never showed a single stain, and spoke of her late husband with precisely calibrated trembling reverence. She maintained the role even as she quietly transferred his fortune to accounts in Switzerland. Poirot had observed her at the inquest, on noting how her hands remained warm and steady when she touched the cold marble urn containing his ashes. A truly grieving widow's fingers grow chill with genuine shock, Hers did not. She had rehearsed the part in private, practicing the exact pitch of her sobs and the graceful tilt of her head before a tall mirror. The performance was magnificent in its technical perfection, yet truth needs no rehearsal. In the end, a single dropped handkerchief, dry as desert sand, revealed the deception. The body had betrayed her. This is the universal lesson of deception. Masks comfort the wearer until the moment the curtain demands honesty. Then they fall, and the actor stands naked before the audience of justice. The psychology of such performances teaches us something profound about human nature. Although every secret motive hides behind a chosen role, because raw truth feels too dangerous to stage under society's gaze. In the palazzo, the elegant setting with its crystal chandeliers, velvet curtains, and Art Deco grandeur only amplifies this truth. The rain now pattering softly against the windows adds its own gentle percussion to the unfolding drama. The scent of furniture wax on the mahogany tables mixes with the fading perfume and the comforting fire warmth. Each suspect feels the weight of their mask growing heavier with every question Poirot asks. We approach the final act. Have you identified the true performer? The spotlight of truth is about to shine. On whom will it fall? Ask yourself, why does this one avoid the terrace now? If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence in such a beautiful yet confining theatre? The first act concluded with Miss Whitmore's breakdown still echoing in the library. The cast sat in uneasy silence in the drawing room, their roles suddenly feeling ill-fitting. Silk rustled as someone shifted. A door closed softly down the corridor. The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour, its sound muffled yet insistent. The first mask cracked. More would follow. Chapter 4. Rehearsed lines pressure mounted steadily through the afternoon as Poirot began testing alibis like fraying scripts under harsh stage lights. The palazzo's elegant drawing room had become a courtroom of suspicion, its crystal chandeliers unlit and the tall windows letting in slanted sunlight that warmed the velvet curtains but left corners in shadow. Fresh coffee had been served again, be its rich continental aroma battling the fading scent of hothouse lilies and lingering cigar smoke from the night before. The fire crackled in the grate, offering welcome warmth against the chill drafts drifting from the cold marble terrace and the Grand Canal beyond. Poirot gathered the entire cast in the ballroom, now stripped of its festive garlands and masks. The polished parquet floor echoed with uneasy footsteps as each suspect took their place. He stood at the center, like a director preparing the next scene, his small hands arranging a crystal paperweight with precise symmetry on a nearby mahogany table. His green eyes gleamed with quiet intensity. The performances, once smooth, were about to be strained under direct questioning. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, tilting his egg-shaped head. But let us examine these rehearsed lines more closely. Lady Margaret Vale's grieving widow performance showed its first visible seams when Poirot asked about her movements on the cold terrace near midnight. She sat wrapped in a cashmere shawl over her morning dress, the silk rustling as she shifted uncomfortably. It was nothing, merely the night air to clear my head, she insisted, voice rising slightly. Yet a servant had clearly heard raised voices and the distinct pop of a champagne cork from that direction. Her lace handkerchief twisted in her lap, the fabric growing damp for the first time. Not from grief, but from nervous perspiration. The warm drawing room suddenly felt too close. Victor Long's steadfast business partner role cracked further when Poirot revealed bank statements discovered in the study safe. Funds had vanished. He cleverly routed through shell accounts that Lang himself had controlled. A simple misunderstanding in the books, he protested, but his kid gloves creaked audibly as his fists clenched. His laughter from the previous night now seemed forced in memory. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. The Contessa Isabella Rossi's passionate confidant performance grew shrill and defensive when confronted with a bundle of love letters found hidden beneath a loose floorboard in the study. Her Worth perfume seemed stronger in her agitation, mixing with the faint sandalwood cologne of Dr. Black nearby. "Those were private matters of the heart," she exclaimed, her silk morning gown rustling sharply as she gestured. Yet the letters revealed financial desperation beneath the romance. Her alibi of constant dancing now sounded less convincing. Dr. Julian Black's helpful physician mask slipped noticeably when Poirot inquired about a small vial in his medical bag. The label had been recently altered, and the contents matched the sedative he claimed to have prescribed for Sir Reginald's nerves. "I only wished to help," he muttered, his hands no longer perfectly steady as he adjusted his collar. The leather bag at his feet suddenly looked heavier with secrets. The faint antiseptic scent beneath his cologne felt out of place in the elegant room. Young Anthony Vale's dutiful nephew act wavered dramatically as Poirot calmly outlined the terms of the will. The document favored charitable causes far more than family inheritance. Anthony paced by the fireplace, the fire's warmth doing nothing to ease the sudden chill on his face. "And Uncle Reggie promised me security," he said, voice cracking. His harlequin charm from the ball had vanished, replaced by raw resentment poorly hidden behind trembling hands. Miss Clara Whitmore alone tried to hold her innocent secretary performance steady, yet even she avoided the study door with new intensity. Her crisp linen blouse seemed suddenly constricting as she twisted the discarded kid gloves in her lap. The earlier breakdown in the library had left cracks that widened under pressure. Poirot made an expressive gesture with his small hands, drawing himself up. "Bravo! But the performance? It was not convincing. Rehearsed lines, they begin to falter when tested by order and method." He adjusted his moustache with precision, the grandfather clock chiming softly in the distance, its sound muffled by heavy velvet curtains. Rain pattered harder now against the tall windows, adding a steady percussion to the rising tension. The scent of furniture wax on the mahogany tables mixed with the rich coffee and the faint wood smoke from the brazier outside. Watch this performance carefully. Is it truth or theater? This actor plays loyalty, but observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? Too perfect, too rehearsed. Truth stumbles, lies flow smooth, the tension rises. Someone will break character soon. Ask yourself, why does he avoid the terrace now? Each suspect's script, so carefully prepared before the curtain rose on the Masquerade ball, now showed obvious strains. Lady Margaret's shoulders no longer shook with appropriate grief, but with genuine anxiety. Victor Lang's steady voice developed small hesitations. In the Contessa's dramatic gestures became jerky rather than graceful. Dr. Black's professional calm cracked like thin ice. Anthony Vale's restless pacing grew erratic on the parquet floor. Miss Whitmore's wide-eyed innocence appeared increasingly forced, her fingers betraying her with constant movement. The psychology, it is everything. People cling to their roles because the mask feels safer than the truth beneath. Greed had performed as business efficiency. Resentment had dressed as familial devotion. Fear had worn the costume of helpfulness. Yet the body always rebels against the lie. A clenched fist when the face smiles. A dry eye when tears are demanded. A steady hand when shock should tremble. Hercule Poirot sees these tells. The little grey cells collect them like discarded prompt cards left on an empty stage. The warm drawing room, with its crackling fire and rich coffee aroma, provided only temporary comfort. Outside, the chill night air from the canal contrasted sharply, reminding everyone of the cold reality waiting beyond the performance. Silk rustled as Lady Margaret adjusted her shawl. A crystal glass clinked nervously on a side table. Doors closed softly down the corridor as servants moved discreetly, sensing the drama's shift. Poirot arranged a vase of lilies symmetrically once more, inhaling their fading sweetness, mixed with the leather scent of old ledgers he had ordered brought down. "We approach the final act," he said quietly. "The curtain will fall on the guilty. Have you identified the true performer yet, mon ami?" The cast sat in heavy silence, their elegant postures grown stiff and uncomfortable. The rain continued its gentle rhythm on the windows, and while inside the ballroom, the air grew thick with unspoken accusations and crumbling masks. Footsteps echoed faintly as someone shifted in their chair. The chandelier above remained dark, yet the spotlight of truth felt brighter with every passing minute. Rehearsed lines began to falter. The script was failing. Chapter 5. The Mask Slips. The major confrontation erupted in the library as golden afternoon light turned the Grand Canal into a ribbon of molten copper beyond the tall windows. Poirot had summoned Victor Lang alone. The heavy oak door closed softly behind them with a decisive click, sealing the room like a private stage. The air carried the mingled scents of old leather-bound books, faint furniture wax, and the lingering rich aroma of continental coffee from the drawing room. A small fire crackled in the grate, or casting dancing shadows across polished mahogany shelves and velvet curtains drawn partially against the chill terrace air. Victor Lang entered with forced confidence, his rough tweed jacket brushing the chair as he sat. He still attempted the loyal business partner role, offering a steady smile and calm voice. "I have told you everything, Monsieur Poirot. The accounts were complicated, but nothing more." Yet the moment Poirot placed the forged ledger and the cyanide vial evidence on the table between them, the mask slipped completely. Lang's face drained of color. His once steady hands began to shake violently as he reached for the leather-bound book, knocking over a crystal inkwell that spilled dark liquid across the blotter like spilled cognac. The emotional breakdown followed raw and unscripted. Lang collapsed forward in the chair, his shoulders heaving with genuine sobs that shook his entire frame. The rough tweed bunched awkwardly as his body surrendered to terror and relief at once. "I never meant for it to end this way," he gasped between sobs. Reginald discovered the embezzlement. He was going to expose me publicly at the ball. I slipped the cyanide into his private cognac earlier that evening while the music masked my movements. I thought the masquerade would hide everything. Real fear and guilt poured out, no longer dressed in polished performance. Beneath the loyal friend lay greed intertwined with panic, the desperate need to protect a life built on stolen funds. Observe, mon ami, this suspect played loyalty too perfectly. The mask slips. Did you catch it? We approach the final act. The curtain will fall on the guilty. And ask yourself, why does he avoid the terrace now? This actor plays shock. But observe the eyes. Where is the moisture? Too perfect, too rehearsed until now. Poirot drew himself up to his full height, his green eyes gleaming with satisfaction. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and made an expressive gesture with his small hands. The performance. Victor Lang had given the most convincing show of helpful cooperation and shocked outrage, the tell. But he made one crucial error. His hands remained perfectly steady when he first approached the study and saw the body, as though the scene had been rehearsed many times in his mind. A truly innocent man would have trembled. The psychology. The body knows the truth even when the face lies. Guilt always betrays the actor through small physical tells. Steady hands in shock, or dry eyes in grief, a voice too smooth when it should crack. This is what the psychology beneath the performance reveals. The truth. Therefore, Victor Lang is our murderer. His grief and loyalty were pure costume. You see it now, no? The theater crumbles. The crucial psychological insight came when Lang admitted rehearsing his alibi and reactions in front of a mirror in his room before the ball. He had practiced the exact tone of concern, the widening of eyes, the dropping of the jaw, exactly as the man in the Ackroyd affair had done. Yet the body had rebelled at the critical moment. The warm library fire crackled louder in the silence that followed, sending faint wood smoke curling toward the ceiling. Outside, rain pattered harder against the windows, a fitting dramatic soundtrack to the breaking of a man. The chill night air from the cracked terrace door contrasted sharply with the fire's warmth, mirroring the cold reality now facing Lang. Poirot arranged a pair of silver candlesticks symmetrically on the desk, restoring order and method to the chaotic scene. The mask had fallen, he said quietly. Beneath it, the true face at last. Lang sat slumped, no longer attempting any performance, his shoulders shaking with unfeigned emotion. The expensive Worth perfume of the Contessa and the sandalwood cologne of others seemed distant now. Only the honest scent of leather, wax, and coffee remained, grounding the moment in raw truth. The rest of the cast waited in the drawing room, sensing the shift in the drama. Lady Margaret's shoulders relaxed slightly for the first time, her silk gown no longer feeling like a constricting costume. Anthony Vale stopped his restless pacing on the parquet floor, the fire's warmth finally reaching him as relief mixed with lingering shock. The Contessa clutched her hands tightly, her dramatic flair subdued. Dr. Black's professional mask softened into quiet regret. Miss Whitmore sat still, her innocent role now validated, the kid gloves finally at rest in her lap. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how the hands tremble when the mask finally falls. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how genuine emotion looks different from performed grief. If you were hiding guilt, how would you perform innocence? The spotlight of truth is about to shine fully. Have you identified the true performer? The library door opened softly. Poirot emerged, followed by a broken Victor Lang. The cast turned as one, a silk rustling and footsteps pausing on the cold marble. The grandfather clock chimed the hour with solemn tones, its sound echoing through the palazzo like a final curtain warning. The rain continued its steady rhythm on the windows, while inside the warm drawing room, the air felt lighter, as though a heavy prop had been removed from the stage. Poirot smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision. The psychology, it is everything. Greed performed as loyalty, fear performed as confidence, but truth needs no rehearsal. He tilted his egg-shaped head, green eyes scanning the relieved yet shaken faces. The major revelation had landed. One mask had fallen completely, exposing the murderer beneath. Yet the full cast still needed to witness the complete unmasking. The drama demanded its final act. The warm fire crackled on, mixing its wood smoke with the rich coffee aroma that servants quietly refreshed. Crystal glasses stood untouched on side tables, their earlier champagne long gone flat. The palazzo, once vibrant with masquerade music, now held only the soft sounds of rain, distant canal lapping, and the quiet breathing of actors whose roles had suddenly shifted. The mask had fallen. The true face emerged. Chapter 6. Behind the Curtain. With Victor Lang's confession, the backstage of the palazzo's relationships lay fully exposed, like scenery dismantled after the final dress rehearsal. The elegant drawing room, once filled with masquerade laughter, now held a quieter, more honest atmosphere. Golden evening light filtered through the tall windows, warming the velvet curtains and polished mahogany tables, while the cold marble terrace outside remained in deepening shadow. Servants had refreshed the coffee, its rich continental aroma blending with the faint wood smoke from the fireplace and the last traces of expensive perfume, Chanel and Worth, still clinging to silk gowns and kid gloves. Lady Margaret Vale had known of her husband's affair with the Contessa, but had performed devoted wife to protect her social standing and the palazzo's reputation. She sat straighter now, her cashmere shawl loosened, the performance of grief replaced by quiet relief, mixed with regret. I suspected the financial troubles, she admitted softly, her voice no longer rehearsed. But I looked away. It was easier to play the perfect hostess. Young Anthony Vale had resented his uncle's tight control over the inheritance, yet had played the charming, dutiful nephew throughout the ball. His harlequin jacket lay discarded on a chair, the fire's warmth finally reaching his face as genuine sorrow surfaced for the man who had both supported and constrained him. I wanted freedom, not his death, he said, footsteps no longer restless on the parquet. The Contessa Isabella Rossi's passionate friendship had masked deep financial desperation. Her crimson silk now seemed less dramatic, her gestures subdued, as she revealed how Reginald had promised help with her debts. Love and money became entangled, she confessed, the Worth perfume fading as honesty emerged. Dr. Sir Julian Black had supplied what he believed was a strong sedative for Sir Reginald's nerves. Unaware Lang had swapped it for cyanide. His professional mask lifted, leaving quiet shame. I only wish to ease his pain, he murmured, leather bag now resting untouched at his feet. Miss Clara Whitmore had suspected the embezzlement and hidden the warning letters out of misplaced loyalty to the man who employed her. Her butterfly mask lay folded on the table, her crisp linen blouse no longer a costume of innocence, but simple clothing for a woman who had tried to do right in a complicated world. I thought silence would protect everyone, she said, fingers finally still. Hidden connections wove through every conversation and stolen glance during the masquerade. Lang had used the ball's chaos to slip into the study. The Contessa had danced with Lang earlier, providing unwitting distraction. Lady Margaret's terrace conversation had been a warning to her husband that went unheeded. Anthony's pacing had masked growing resentment. Every seemingly innocent movement on the glittering stage had served the darker backstage motive of greed. Behind every curtain, a secret, every secret a motive. In this theater of human frailty, motives hide behind carefully chosen performances, because raw truth feels too dangerous to stage under the gaze of society. People wear masks to navigate the roles assigned to them: the perfect wife, the reliable business partner, the innocent secretary, the loyal nephew. Greed masquerades as efficient business management. Resentment dresses as familial devotion. Fear wears the costume of helpful professionalism. We rehearse these parts from childhood, learning that a convincing smile opens doors and secures invitations, while honest pain closes them. The Venetian Palazzo Ball, with its crystal chandeliers tinkling overhead, silk gowns rustling across parquet floors, and the sweet scent of hothouse roses filling the warm air, was merely an exaggerated mirror of daily life. Every guest arrived already costumed in the expectations of others, elegant, refined, playing their part in the grand masquerade we call civilized society. Yet the body refuses the lie. A trembling hand when the voice stays smooth, a dry handkerchief when tears are demanded by the script, a steady hand when genuine shock should make fingers unsteady. These are the physical tells that betray even the most polished actor. The warm drawing room fire crackled softly, sending wood smoke curling upward to mix with the rich coffee aroma and the faint leather scent of old ledgers. Outside, rain continued its gentle patter against the windows, a steady rhythm underscoring the revelations. The chill night air drifting from the terrace contrasted with the comforting fire warmth, mirroring how truth brings both cold clarity and eventual relief. I am reminded of the Orient Express affair, where a group of passengers performed innocence across borders, languages, and swaying train compartments. Each carried a hidden motive buried beneath polished manners, expensive luggage, and rehearsed stories. One woman played the grieving mother with tears that never quite fell convincingly. Another performed the loyal valet, whose hands never trembled even when confronted with difficult questions, when they had practiced their alibis in the mirrored compartments of the luxury train, timing their lines to the rhythm of the wheels on the tracks. The collective performance was impressive. Silk rustling, champagne glasses clinking, distant piano music providing cover. Yet one small error betrayed them all: a mismatched train ticket here, a cigarette lit with too steady a flame there, a glance that lingered too long on a forbidden door. The body knows what the mind tries to conceal. The heart cannot sustain the performance indefinitely when justice demands honesty. In the end, the masks fell because truth, like the Orient Express itself, moves inexorably toward its destination, carrying every secret into the light. This is the universal truth about deception. It requires constant energy and perfect rehearsal, while honesty simply exists, needing no script. The psychology of hidden motives shows us why revelation, though painful, often feels like liberation, even for those touched by guilt. Once the curtain parts and the spotlight of truth shines fully, the crushing weight of pretense lifts from the shoulders. In the palazzo, each suspect now stood lighter. Lady Margaret's posture had relaxed. Anthony's pacing had ceased. The Contessa's dramatic flair had softened into quiet reflection. Dr. Black's professional stiffness had eased. Miss Whitmore's nervous twisting of gloves had stopped. Their futures remained uncertain, yet they breathed more freely in the honest air. Theatrical wisdom for you, mon ami. Watch always the small moments when no one thinks the spotlight is upon them. There, The true self peeks through, unscripted, raw, and revealing. A trembling lip when alone by the window. A steady hand reaching for coffee when grief should make it shake. The stage is set for justice now that the backstage has been revealed. We have seen behind the curtain. The secrets have spilled forth like the cognac across the mahogany desk. Every actor has shown something real beneath the costume. The rain softened to a gentle drizzle, its sound blending with the distant lapping of the Grand Canal and the soft closing of a door down the corridor. The grandfather clock chimed peacefully in the hall. The warm drawing room, with its crackling fire, rich coffee, and fading floral sweetness, felt transformed. No longer a stage of suspicion, but a space where truth had finally taken its place. Behind every curtain, a secret. Every secret, a motive. Chapter 7. The Final Act. The cast assembled in the grand ballroom as dusk settled over Venice, the final act about to unfold. Crystal chandeliers had been lit once more, casting a harsher, more revealing light across the polished parquet floor and the velvet curtains that framed the tall windows. Beyond the glass, the Grand Canal lay dark and shimmering under lantern glow, indifferent to the human drama reaching its climax. The air carried the rich aroma of fresh continental coffee, the faint sweetness of wilting hothouse lilies, and the comforting crackle of wood smoke from the fireplace. No champagne flowed tonight. No silk gowns rustled in dance. Only the soft footsteps of the suspects echoed as they took their places in a semicircle of mahogany chairs. Poirot stood at the center, like the director commanding his stage. He drew himself up to his full height, small yet utterly commanding. His green eyes gleamed with satisfaction as he surveyed the cast. Lady Margaret Vale, Victor Lang, Contessa Isabella Rossi, Dr. Julian Black, Miss Clara Whitmore, and young Anthony Vale. Each face showed the strain of the long day. Silk shawls, tweed jackets, and crisp linen blouses no longer felt like elegant costumes, but like heavy burdens, finally ready to be shed. Mesdames et messieurs, Poirot began, his voice clear and theatrical. You have each performed for Poirot. Some truthfully, some not. Let us review the performances, shall we? He made an expressive gesture with his small hands, tilting his egg-shaped head. The ballroom fell silent, except for the gentle ticking of the distant grandfather clock and the soft patter of rain against the windows. Lady Margaret, you played the grieving widow with such technical skill. The handkerchief dabbed at the eyes. The shoulders shook at exactly the right moments. The performance of grief was admirable, but the handkerchief remained dry. The mascara never ran. You knew of the death before the scream echoed through the ballroom. Your grief was pure costume, worn to protect your social position while you suspected your husband's affair and financial ruin. Lady Margaret lowered her eyes, the cashmere shawl slipping slightly from her shoulders. No protest came, only quiet acceptance. Poirot turned smoothly. Victor Lang, you performed the loyal friend and business partner with magnificent conviction. You laughed too loudly, offered steady arms, and spoke of brotherhood in commerce. But loyalty does not forge ledgers or slip cyanide into a private glass of cognac while the masquerade music masked your movements. You rehearsed your shock in front of a mirror, practicing the widened eyes and dropped jaw. Yet when you first saw the body, your hands remained perfectly steady. A truly shocked man trembles. Your performance was flawless until that single tell. Lang sat slumped in his chair, the rough tweed jacket suddenly too large on his frame. His earlier breakdown had left him stripped of pretense. He nodded once, eyes fixed on the parquet floor. Contessa Isabella, Poirot continued, his voice gentle yet relentless. Your role was the passionate confidant and patron of the arts. You danced beneath the tinkling chandeliers, spoke warmly of beauty, and accepted compliments with dramatic flair. But passionate friends do not hide love letters that reveal financial desperation, nor do they provide convenient distractions for a murderer. Your worth perfume could not mask the scent of motive. The Contessa clutched her hands tightly in her lap, her crimson silk morning dress rustling softly as she shifted. The dramatic gestures had vanished. Dr. Julian Black, you performed the helpful physician with crisp professional calm. You examined the body, spoke of heart warnings, and offered medical opinions with steady hands. Yet innocent doctors do not alter vile labels or supply substances that can so easily become poison. Your sandalwood cologne and leather bag carried the faint trace of complicity. Dr. Black's shoulders sagged. He adjusted his collar once, then let his hands fall still. Miss Clara Whitmore, your role was the innocent secretary, wide-eyed, earnest, helpful. You typed letters until 8, then joined the ball briefly. But innocent bystanders do not hide urgent warning letters about irregularities in the accounts. Your loyalty was misplaced, yet your hands finally stopped trembling when truth emerged. Miss Whitmore sat quietly, the folded butterfly mask resting in her lap like a discarded prop. Relief softened her features. And Anthony Vale, Poirot said, turning to the young man. You played the devastated nephew and heir with cracking voice and restless pacing. The harlequin charm masked deep resentment over the will that favored charity over family. Your footsteps were too steady when you first approached the study. Resentment performed as duty, but the mask never fully convinced. Anthony Vale met Poirot's gaze steadily for the first time, the fire's warmth reflecting in his eyes. Poirot paused, letting the silence build like rising tension before the final curtain. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision and touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. The psychology. It is everything. Order and method had revealed every flaw in the performances. And so we come to our leading performer, Victor Lang. Poirot's voice rose slightly, commanding the full spotlight. You gave the most convincing performance of all. The shock, the outrage, the helpful cooperation after the body was discovered. Magnifique. You moved through the ballroom offering comfort, spoke of brotherhood, and even suggested heart failure to the police. But you made one fatal error, and one small moment when the mask slipped completely. Your hands remained steady when you first saw Sir Reginald slumped at the mahogany desk. No tremor, no hesitation. A man truly encountering sudden death does not reach for details with such calm. You had rehearsed the scene too well in your mind. Greed performed as loyalty, fear performed as confidence. But the body betrayed you, as it always does. Lang lifted his head, eyes hollow. No more lines remained to deliver. The performance is over, Poirot declared, drawing himself up once more. The curtain falls. The truth, she takes her bow. Victor Lang poisoned Sir Reginald Vale to silence the exposure of his embezzlement. The masquerade provided the perfect cover. The music, the masks, the chaos of costumed guests. But in the theater of crime, every actor eventually forgets their lines, and the little grey cells see what the eyes miss. The psychology beneath the performance always reveals the true face. the ballroom seemed to exhale. Silk rustled as Lady Margaret relaxed fully. Anthony Vale's shoulders straightened. The Contessa released a long breath. Dr. Black closed his eyes briefly. Miss Whitmore's hands lay peaceful in her lap. The fire crackled louder, sending wood smoke curling toward the high ceiling. Rain pattered steadily against the windows, a soft applause of nature. The rich coffee aroma lingered, grounding the moment in quiet reality. The cold terrace air seeped faintly through a cracked door, contrasting the warm room where justice had finally taken center stage. Poirot arranged a crystal decanter and 2 candlesticks symmetrically on a side table, restoring perfect order. That you have all performed your roles, some better than others. But truth needs no rehearsal. It simply is. He turned to the assembled cast one final time, green eyes sweeping across each face. The spotlight has shone. The masks have been removed. Only truth remains on this stage tonight. The final act concluded. Only truth survived the curtain call. Chapter 8. Curtain Call. The curtain call arrived under the soft lantern glow of the Grand Canal. Police launches cut through the dark water with quiet efficiency. Their engines a low rumble that echoed off the marble facade of the Palazzo della Masquerade. Victor Long was led away in handcuffs, his rough tweed jacket now serving as a prisoner's shroud rather than a costume of loyalty. The once confident business partner walked with heavy steps across the cold marble terrace. His shoulders slumped and his face stripped of every rehearsed expression. No dramatic protests, no final performance. Only the quiet shuffle of footsteps and the faint clink of metal. Inside the grand ballroom, the cast remained gathered under the crystal chandeliers that cast a softer, more forgiving light than during the revelation. The polished parquet floor reflected the glow of wall sconces, while the velvet curtains framed tall windows looking out onto the night. The fire still crackled in the grate, sending waves of comforting warmth through the room and filling the air with the pleasant scent of wood smoke. Servants had brought fresh, strong continental coffee, its rich aroma mixing with the fading sweetness of hothouse lilies and the last traces of expensive perfume. Lady Margaret Vale stood near the fireplace, her cashmere shawl draped loosely over her shoulders. The performance of grief had fallen away completely. Her posture was straighter, her eyes clearer. The silk morning gown no longer felt like a constricting costume of widowhood, but simple clothing for a woman stepping into an uncertain yet honest future. She watched Lang being escorted onto the police launch with a mixture of relief and quiet sorrow. "I suspected something was wrong," she said softly, voice free of theatrical trembling. "But I never imagined it would end like this." The dry handkerchief she had clutched for hours now lay forgotten on a side table. Anthony Vale stood beside her, the restless energy of the dutiful nephew gone. His harlequin jacket had been discarded earlier. He now wore a simple shirt that seemed lighter on his frame. The fire's warmth reached him fully for the first time, easing the chill of resentment that had lingered beneath his performance. Uncle Reggie was difficult, he admitted, but he did not deserve poison in his glass. His voice carried genuine regret rather than rehearsed grief. The young man's pacing had stopped. In its place stood a steadier presence, ready to face the consequences of the will and the family's changed fortunes. Contessa Isabella Rossi sat in one of the mahogany armchairs, her dramatic flair subdued into quiet reflection. The Worth perfume still clung faintly to her clothing, but her gestures had lost their theatrical exaggeration. She twisted a kid glove in her lap, the soft leather creaking softly. I danced while a murder was being prepared, she murmured. My debts blinded me to the danger. The passionate confidant role had crumbled, leaving a woman who now saw the cost of mixing love with financial desperation. Her eyes followed Lang's departure, with a complex mix of pity and self-reproach. Dr. Julian Black stood near the terrace doors, the chill night air brushing his face as he stared out at the canal. His leather medical bag rested closed at his feet, no longer a prop for helpful professionalism. The sandalwood cologne, mixed with the faint antiseptic scent, seemed less prominent now. I supplied what I believed was medicine, he said quietly. My trust was used as a weapon. The physician's crisp calm had been replaced by honest regret. He adjusted his collar once, then let his hands fall still, accepting that his small part in the tragedy would be examined in the coming days. In Miss Clara Whitmore remained seated, her crisp linen blouse slightly rumpled after the long day. The folded butterfly mask from the ball lay beside her like a discarded souvenir. Her fingers, once constantly twisting gloves, now rested peacefully. I thought hiding the letters would protect Sir Reginald, she confessed. Instead, it delayed justice. The innocent secretary role had been genuine in intent, if not in full honesty. Relief softened her features as the weight of secrecy lifted. Poirot moved among them with the calm of a director after a successful closing night. He smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his sleeve with precision and touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully. His green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as he observed the transformations. The psychology? It is everything. Masks had been removed, and beneath them lay real human faces, flawed, relieved, and newly honest. No applause filled the ballroom. Only the soft sounds of justice taking its course. The closing of carriage doors, the murmur of police voices, the gentle lap of water against the palazzo steps. The grandfather clock in the hall chimed the late hour with solemn, measured tones, its sound muffled by the heavy velvet curtains. Rain had eased to a light drizzle, pattering softly against the windows like fading stage effects. Watch this performance carefully, mon ami. Not the dramatic scenes of earlier, but these quiet moments after the masks fall. You see how shoulders relax when pretense is no longer required, how eyes clear when secrets no longer weigh them down. The careful observer will notice the difference between performed grief and genuine relief. Truth needs no rehearsal. It simply arrives, and the soul breathes easier. Lady Margaret turned to Poirot, her voice steady. Thank you, Monsieur Poirot. The palazzo felt like a prison of lies these past hours. Now it feels lighter. She glanced around the elegant room, the polished mahogany, the crystal glassware, the Art Deco details that had once framed a masquerade of deception. The setting itself seemed transformed from a glittering stage of suspicion into a quieter space of resolution. Anthony nodded in agreement. I thought I wanted the inheritance above all. Now I see freedom in honesty. The Contessa offered a small, genuine smile for the first time. Dr. Black closed his medical bag with a soft click, symbolizing acceptance. Miss Whitmore simply breathed deeply, inhaling the comforting mix of coffee aroma, wood smoke, and fresh night air drifting from the terrace. Poirot arranged a pair of silver candlesticks symmetrically on a side table, restoring perfect order and method to the room. Justice begins now, he said quietly. Not with fanfare or applause, but with truth. The theater of crime always ends this way, The actors leave the stage changed, some lighter, some heavier, with consequences, but none the same. The police launch pulled away from the terrace steps, carrying Victor Lang into the night. The sound of its engine faded gradually, leaving only the gentle lapping of the canal and the distant call of a gondolier. Inside, the cast began to disperse slowly, some to private rooms, others to sit longer by the fire. Silk rustled softly as Lady Margaret adjusted her shawl one final time. The footsteps echoed on the parquet as Anthony walked toward the windows. Doors closed gently down the corridors. No applause for this performance, only justice. The ballroom gradually emptied of tension. The warm fire continued to crackle, the rich coffee aroma lingered, and the chill night air from the terrace brought a sense of fresh beginning. The Palazzo della Maschera, once the perfect stage for tragedy and deception, now stood as witness to the quiet aftermath where masks had been permanently set aside. No applause for this performance, only justice. Chapter 9. After the show weeks had passed since the final curtain fell on the tragedy at the Palazzo della Maschera, the grand Venetian residence, once vibrant with the masquerade's music and swirling silk gowns, now stood in peaceful quiet. Golden spring sunlight streamed through the tall arched windows, warming the velvet curtains and polished mahogany surfaces. The crystal chandeliers hung dark and silent, their tinkling replaced by the gentle lapping of the Grand Canal against the marble terrace. Hothouse lilies and roses had been replaced by simpler fresh flowers, their sweet scent lighter and less oppressive. The air carried the comforting aroma of strong continental coffee and the faint, clean smell of furniture wax. Lady Margaret Vale had decided to sell the rare Titian sketch and several other valuable pieces. The proceeds allowed her to pay off lingering debts and move to a smaller, quieter villa on the Brenta Riviera. The performance of the Perfect Society widow had been laid aside forever. She now walked the gardens of her new home with lighter steps, her silk gowns exchanged for simpler linen dresses. The dry handkerchief and rehearsed sobs were gone. In their place was honest reflection on a marriage built more on appearances than affection. "I spent years playing the devoted hostess," she confided to a close friend during a quiet lunch. "Now I can simply be Margaret." Her shoulders no longer carried the weight of maintaining a flawless image. The chill of suspicion had lifted, replaced by the warm sun of newfound freedom. Young Anthony Vale had left Venice for Florence, where he found honest work managing a small gallery specializing in lesser-known Renaissance drawings. The harlequin charm and restless pacing of the dutiful nephew had transformed into steady purpose. He no longer resented the will that favored charity. Instead, he embraced the challenge of building his own path. And the fire's warmth he had finally felt in the palazzo now seemed to burn inside him as quiet ambition. His footsteps on Florentine cobblestones were measured and confident, free from the tremor of hidden resentment. "Uncle Reggie taught me one final lesson," he wrote in a letter to Miss Whitmore. "Honesty is harder than performance, but far more rewarding." Contessa Isabella Rossi had returned to Rome, her financial desperation no longer hidden behind passionate declarations of love for the arts. She had taken a position as a legitimate patron and consultant for a respected foundation, channeling her dramatic energy into genuine support for young artists. The crimson silk and Worth perfume remained part of her wardrobe, but the gestures were no longer exaggerated for effect. Her love of beauty had been stripped of its desperate undertones. As she walked the Roman streets with clearer eyes, the mask of the glamorous confidant, replaced by the face of a woman who had learned the cost of mixing affection with ambition. Dr. Julian Black had quietly retired from private practice. The leather medical bag that once carried both medicine and unintended complicity now rested in storage. He spent his days in a modest apartment near the Rialto, reading medical journals and tending a small terrace garden. The sandalwood cologne and crisp professional calm had softened into gentle self-acceptance. I wanted to help, he told Poirot during a final meeting. Instead, I became part of the performance. Never again. The chill of guilt had eased, warmed by time and honest reflection. His hands, once steady in deception, now moved with calm purpose among his plants. But Miss Clara Whitmore had remained at the palazzo as its new curator. The butterfly mask and nervous twisting of kid gloves belonged to the past. Her crisp linen blouses were now worn with quiet confidence as she catalogued the remaining collection and guided small groups of serious scholars through the rooms. The study where Sir Reginald had died had been respectfully transformed into a private library. The mahogany desk gleamed under fresh wax, the bitter almond memory long dissipated. She moved through the corridors with steady footsteps, the parquet no longer echoing suspicion, but quiet competence. I tried to protect him with silence, she said one afternoon, while arranging fresh flowers. Now I protect his legacy with truth. The palazzo itself had undergone its own transformation, and the glittering stage of the Masquerade ball had become a peaceful gallery once more. The cold marble terrace, once witness to whispered arguments, now hosted gentle morning light and the occasional visitor. The grand ballroom, stripped of festive garlands, welcomed only the soft sounds of footsteps and distant canal traffic. Velvet curtains hung neatly, no longer framing suspicion, but framing beauty. The fire in the drawing room still crackled on cooler evenings, its wood smoke mixing pleasantly with the rich coffee aroma and the sweet scent of simpler floral arrangements. The setting had shifted from crime scene to place of quiet reflection. The elegant Art Deco details restored to their proper role as backdrop rather than stage. Poirot had remained in Venice a few extra days to observe these changes. He sat now on the terrace one final morning, the chill night air replaced by pleasant spring warmth. He arranged a small vase of fresh lilies symmetrically on the table, inhaling their gentle sweetness. His green eyes gleamed with quiet satisfaction as he reflected on the transformations. The psychology. It is everything. Each actor had left the theatre altered, some lighter, freed from the weight of pretense, others wiser, carrying the lessons of exposure. Greed had been unmasked, resentment had been acknowledged, fear had been replaced by acceptance. The masks society demanded, the perfect wife, the loyal partner, the innocent secretary, had been set aside, revealing the real faces beneath. You watch with Poirot, no? You see how the theatre empties after the final act. The costumes are hung away, the makeup is removed. The actors step into the real world carrying new understanding. The careful observer will notice how genuine relief looks different from performed grief. Shoulders relax, eyes clear, steps become lighter. Truth needs no rehearsal, and the soul breathes easier when the performance ends. The Grand Canal sparkled under the sun, its waters carrying gondolas with soft oar splashes. A distant piano played faintly from another palazzo, the notes drifting like a gentle epilogue. Doors closed softly within the house as Miss Whitmore directed staff. The grandfather clock chimed peacefully from the hall. No more screams, no more missed cues, only the quiet rhythm of lives moving forward. Lady Margaret had sent a note of thanks, her handwriting steady and free of dramatic flourishes. Anthony's letter from Florence spoke of new plans, when the Contessa wrote from Rome of a successful exhibition. Dr. Black's brief card expressed quiet gratitude. Each message carried the same underlying truth. The theatre had changed them. Poirot touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and made an expressive gesture with his small hands. The stage had been cleared. The lessons had been learned. The human drama, with all its masks and performances, had revealed once more that truth ultimately triumphs. The theatre emptied. The lessons remained. Chapter 10, Poirot reviews the performance. Hercule Poirot sat comfortably in his private sitting room at the Hotel Danieli, the evening light of Venice filtering softly through lace curtains. A pot of fragrant tisane steamed gently on the small table beside him, its herbal aroma replacing the stronger continental coffee of the palazzo. And the room was elegantly simple. Polished mahogany furniture, a velvet armchair, and a small fire crackling in the grate that sent faint wood smoke curling upward. Beyond the window, the Grand Canal murmured with the soft splash of oars and the distant call of gondoliers. The chill night air had given way to a pleasant spring warmth that drifted in through the half-open terrace doors. News of the cast's fates had reached him over the past weeks. Lady Margaret now lived quietly on the Brenta Riviera, her social performances replaced by genuine peace. Anthony Vale thrived in his Florence gallery, his restless resentment transformed into steady purpose. Contessa Isabella had found honest work in Rome, her dramatic passion redirected toward legitimate arts patronage. Dr. Julian Black tended his small garden with calm acceptance. Miss Clara Whitmore curated the Palazzo collection with quiet competence. Victor Lang faced justice in a Venetian prison, his rehearsed loyalty finally stripped away. The theatre had emptied, yet the human drama lingered in Poirot's mind like the final notes of a waltz. He touched his magnificent moustache thoughtfully and arranged the tisane cup with precise symmetry. The psychology, it is everything. Why do people perform rather than reveal truth? Because the mask comforts where honesty feels dangerous. Society demands roles: the perfect wife, the loyal partner, the innocent secretary, the charming nephew. And we rehearse them until the lines feel safer than the self. Greed wears the costume of efficient business. Resentment dresses as familial devotion. Fear performs as professional confidence. In the Palazzo della Maschera, every guest arrived already costumed in expectation. The masquerade ball merely amplified the daily play we call civilized life, with its silk gowns rustling, crystal chandeliers tinkling, and expensive perfume trailing through warm drawing rooms. Yet guilt always betrays the actor. The body refuses the lie, even when the voice delivers flawless lines. A steady hand when shock should tremble. A dry handkerchief when tears are demanded. A glance too steady on a door that should not matter. These small tells, the little grey cells, collect like discarded prompt cards. In the palazzo, Victor Lang's hands remained calm at the sight of the body, because the scene had been rehearsed in his mind. Lady Margaret's mascara never ran because her grief was technical, not felt, and the Contessa's dramatic gestures grew shrill when confronted because passion could no longer hide desperation. Each performance required constant energy the human spirit cannot sustain forever. I am reminded of the Styles case many years ago. where a family gathered around a poisoned patriarch performed devotion with remarkable skill. Each wore the mask of loyalty, practicing sorrow over tea and sympathy, timing their lines to the rhythm of mourning. One daughter's hands shook only when she thought no one watched. Another's smile never reached her eyes. They had rehearsed alibis in mirrored bedrooms and quiet corridors, believing their performance perfect. Yet the psychology of revelation undid them all. A single mismatched detail, a tremor at the wrong moment, as a steady hand reaching for a cigarette when grief should make fingers unsteady. The body knows what the mind tries to conceal. Truth triumphed because performance demands rehearsal, while honesty simply exists. The masks society demands: politeness over pain, loyalty over resentment, innocence over knowledge, crack under the spotlight of careful observation. In the end, the actors stood exposed, lighter for the loss of pretense, even as justice claimed its due. The psychology of revelation is liberation. Once the curtain parts and the spotlight of truth shines fully, the crushing weight of pretense lifts. We saw it clearly in the palazzo. Lady Margaret's shoulders relaxed when the widow's role was no longer required. Anthony's pacing ceased as resentment gave way to honest ambition. The Contessa's flair softened into genuine reflection. Doctor, now Black's professional stiffness eased into acceptance. Miss Whitmore's nervous gestures stopped as secrecy yielded to competence. Even Victor Lang, in his final broken sobs, seemed lighter once the mask of loyalty fell completely. Guilt had chained them to their roles. Truth set them free. People wear masks because truth feels dangerous in a world that rewards polished performances. Society applauds the perfect hostess, the reliable partner, the helpful professional. We learn early that a convincing smile opens doors while raw pain closes them. The Venetian Masquerade, with its lace and gold leaf masks, its champagne corks popping, and its silk rustling across parquet floors, was merely the most beautiful version of this eternal human play. And yet the theatre of crime reveals what society conceals: that behind every polished role lies a frightened actor, desperate to be believed, desperate to belong. The warm drawing room fire, the rich coffee aroma, the sweet hothouse flowers, all provided temporary comfort while the real drama unfolded. But when the spotlight of order and method shone, the costumes grew heavy and the lines faltered. This is why truth ultimately triumphs over performance. Truth needs no rehearsal. It requires no energy to maintain. It simply is. The body cannot sustain the lie indefinitely. A trembling lip when alone by the window, a steady hand in a moment of supposed shock, a dry eye when moisture should appear. These betrayals are inevitable. Hercule Poirot has seen it in case after case. The masks fall because the soul grows weary of the weight. In Venice, the Grand Canal continued its eternal flow, indifferent to human deception, while inside the palazzo, justice restored balance. Poirot sipped his tisane, the herbal warmth soothing after the intensity of the investigation. He made an expressive gesture with his small hands and tilted his egg-shaped head. The careful observer, and you are becoming careful, mon ami, will notice how genuine emotion differs from performed feeling. Real grief leaves traces. Real relief lightens the step. Real honesty clears the eyes. Watch always the small moments when no one thinks they are observed. There the true self peeks through, unscripted and raw. The theatre of crime fascinates Poirot because it strips away the costumes and reveals raw humanity, flawed, frightened, yet capable of growth when cornered by truth. In the palazzo, on the elegant stage of wealth and beauty became the setting where masks crumbled and lessons lingered. The players left changed, some wiser, some freer, all touched by the spotlight that reveals rather than flatters. Until the next theatre of crime, mes amis, Poirot watches always.